The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello everyone, and welcome to another 3D Buzz MMO class session. Actually, this is our very first true class session that we are recording with everyone. Now, this system is something that we're testing new. We've done a few test runs ourselves with a very small number of people. Now, this time around, we've got about 70 people that are in the class and watching the stream. So we'll just we'll test it out. Hopefully at this point everybody can see our screen, and yeah, so today's session what we're going to do is continue with the story, but this is actually going to be iteration number 1. Let me go ahead and say real quick, joining we've got Zach Parrish and Mr. Lee Renaud. Zach, let me go ahead and hand this over to you for a second.
Well, sure. In the excuse me, in the last video, which hopefully at this point, if you're attending this class, you did watch that. Excuse me, just a moment. We covered the basics of our story. It's almost like a story skeleton, something from which you could sit down and actually write out a big, long, and involved story. This was really just a preliminary idea proposal, not anything that we're hardcore locked into. A lot of the names have just been kind of made up sort of on the fly to have something to build from. The only idea that we really wanted when we first walked in was a combination of science fiction and fantasy. And so everything kind of branched out from there. And again, hopefully you've watched that video and you've seen how that went down. So what are we doing here? In this meeting, I'm only here to discuss anybody's questions or concerns or even suggestions about the story and about its flow.
That's right. This is something that's going to be very important as we do each of these class sessions. We're going to let you guys know at the beginning of the session what the topic is, and we really must stay on topic. When developing a game, there's so many different tangents one can take and just kind of start exploring topics that get further and further away from the main subject that we want to, well, stay close to.
And we know that's going to be really bad here on the first meeting. I know a lot of you are probably here with some question that you've had since the class started. How are we going to handle this? When are you going to get into that, etc. and so forth? No, this is not the time. This is not the place. We're going to be talking strictly about the story. If you have intentions on talking about anything else, please keep those questions to yourself, or by all means, post something over in the MMO lounge, and we will get to you as quick as we can.
Yeah, we've definitely given you our ear over there, as well as you guys have our PM information, you have our email information, and we've been trying to respond as quickly as possible. As a matter of fact, Zach's been quite proud with some of his response times with emails recently. Well, I think the quickest being the other day, what was it?
It was negative 10 minutes.
No,
according to Google, it was negative 10 minutes.
I think it was, but I think you had like a 4-second reply or something like that.
I've been like almost chatting with people through email.
It was pretty scary. So before we get started, let me take just a second to explain something about the system. You guys can raise your hand, and there's, if you look over at your little control panel, you'll find where you can raise your hand at. And I can see when a hand is up. Like right now, we've got Mr. Tiziano's got his hand up, which I'm going to put it down for him. There we go. But just because we're not taking any questions at the moment as we're getting everything kicked off. When somebody does raise their hand, Gavin, go ahead and raise your hand again. Let me demonstrate to everyone how this will work. So Gavin's going to raise his hand, and then I can unmute him. Hey, Mr. Gavin, are you there?
I'm unmuted.
All right.
Yep,
How you doing?
I can hear you. I'm good, yes. I've spent 4 hours catching up with the forums today. That's all I've achieved.
I haven't seen times at 3D Buzz like this in so many years. I've had about 2 hours of sleep, and in those 2 hours, the forums just exploded. And when I got back up, I was blurry-eyed. I hadn't got my coffee yet, and I was like, "What the? I'm not even going to be able to get through this before we start."
Yeah,
been shocking. But I wanted to take a second to thank you for all of the help that you've been providing people over in the forums. I've seen that, and it's just absolutely awesome.
Love the new avatar.
Oh, that's cool. Oh, you saw the yes. You will respect my authority.
That's right.
Yeah. Well, I'm a pedant, so it comes out.
So if you don't mind, real quick, Gavin, go ahead and tell everyone, just introduce yourself to them, who you are on 3D Buzz, since you are going to be one of the primary people helping with people that get stuck in the class.
Okay. Well, I'm Fat Gav, as most of you, or certainly people who've been around for the last couple of years will know. I'm Fat Gav on the forums, and I like spelling. And no, I'm a musician by training and trade, but I've been interested in modeling and programming and generally anything. I came to 3D Buzz looking for programming tuition and ended up watching everything. And here I am, yes.
Yes.
I've got lots of ideas. Most of them are probably impractical.
Awesome. But you have
That's about me.
You have been investing quite a bit of time recently with helping members and students on 3D Buzz, correct?
Well, yeah, I've finally got to the point where I see questions that I know the answers to. I've been around for the forums for a while, but I'm a relative noob when it comes to most of the subject matter covered by 3D Buzz. So, but it's just nice. I've got to a point and gone, oh yeah, no, that I know what that is.
Yeah, that's awesome.
It's just a question of having the time.
He says that he acts all humble and everything, but then I see him on the forums like answering people's questions about their code and what's going on in their Unity project. So he's being modest.
Yeah, he actually knows quite a bit.
All entirely inaccurate.
Okay, well, thank you very much for joining us today, and I'm sure we'll be hearing from you again very shortly, as you were one of the ones joining us last night when we were going over the initial story proposal. Now, Mr. Tiziano has raised his hand one more time, so let's go ahead and find out real quick what it is that he is wanting. Mr. Tiziano.
Well, hi. No, actually, I didn't raise my hand. I clicked on something else. And
your mic volume is very low.
Yeah.
Very low. Okay. Let me sort it out.
And you're over in Italy, aren't you?
Well, I am Italian, but I'm in UK. I'm in England.
Oh, well, when you go back home to Italy, just make sure that you've got a couch that I can come over and crash on for a while.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah, that'll be good.
Awesome. I so want to get over to Italy.
Is it volume better now?
It's
Not at
now?
all.
Nope, that's a little bit better.
Let's be better. Okay.
There we go.
Yeah, well, that's maximum now. So.
Okay, yeah, but we can hear you. Excellent.
Okay, excellent. Okay, good.
All right, well, we know that works. So did you have a quick question?
Yeah, if it may, I'm not sure if it's the right question right now, but it's more of a suggestion on the story and so on. If you want to start talking about the story, if not, I can keep my question quiet for now. And
okay, yeah, hang tight with your question for just a few minutes. We'll get into the story stuff, and then absolutely, we definitely want to hear suggestions. Okay.
No problem. Thank you.
Oh, okay, brilliant. Thank you, sir. Okay, so that gives you guys just a quick idea of how you can raise your hand, and we have the ability to unmute you and let you speak. Again, make sure you're aware of where your microphone volume is. So far, with the tests we've done, probably 20-25% of the people we've had to ask to turn their mics up because the volume was just a bit too low. Now, we are screen grabbing the presentation, so I just want to let you guys know if you are unable to participate in any of these class sessions that we have, it's completely okay. We will make sure to post these videos afterwards right into the MMO video section on 3D Buzz. I also want to bring your attention real quick to the questions section inside your control panel. You do have the ability to type in questions just in case you don't have a mic or you are one of those people who just don't like to talk. But come on,
it happens.
You're not actually standing up in front of, how many people do we have now? Almost 80.
Yeah.
I honestly did not expect that many. That's so impressive. But you can type over there, as several of you guys are doing right now. So shivving off work, so no mic. Ha ha ha. You know, I don't want to be rude and raise my hand. But
it's not rude.
Are we able to see the other people currently in the class? Actually, that's a good question. Let me come over here. And let's see, attendees can view the attendee list. There you go. So at this point, everyone should be able to see everyone else. And now there's nice and cool and things like that popping up.
But if we catch anybody passing notes, we are going to kick you out.
Unless the note's to you, right, Zach?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's what I figured. All right, well, that's about 10 minutes into just some light chit-chat and discussing kind of how the system works to get started. I'm sure it's going to be bumpy for the first few times, but
Sure.
this thing does provide a lot of flexibility. One of the things originally that we were going to do was simply have people meet in the IRC and then have Skype, but with Skype we were limited to only 25 people that we could connect with. We could not control who was talking at what time, and as many of you that have listened to 3D Buzz radio shows in the past know, people start stepping all over people and it becomes, well, very messy. So this gives us a lot more control, but most importantly is it gives us the ability to share our screen with all of you live so that you guys can actually see what we're doing. It also gives us the ability to switch to one of your monitors. Don't worry, we're not going to do something like that unless you are, you've been talked with ahead of time and you know that you're going to be a presenter, perhaps talking about a model that you've created or texture, etc.
Though it could get helpful in a later code session, you know, if we're all kind of talking about code and you have a question about something you've coded, it does allow us to look at what is on your screen, which can be very useful.
Exactly. Now, we did have another question that came up over on the side, asking about, from Mr. Toots, can we raise our hand and ask through the question tab, or shall we just ask here without raising our hand? Well, when we start talking with everybody here in regards to how we want to begin mutating this story, it's up to you. If you want to raise your hand, that means you're going to be brought in audio-wise to talk with us. And if you don't want to discuss anything via voice, then please feel free to type the question over in the questions area.
Right, but choose one or the other. Please don't do both. Please don't type a question and then raise your hand.
And then good old David asked about, I don't see any chat. Well, right now we're not actually using the chat system. What people are seeing at the moment is just they're kind of using the question area as chat.
Yeah. No talking in class.
So anyways, with that.
Oh, one more thing.
Yeah.
I will just kind of mention this. We can see if you are not paying attention to the webcast.
Yeah, we can.
And the reason that's
Gavin.
that's the reason that's important is that if we notice that you are constantly losing focus, we are going to go ahead and drop you out just in case somebody else needs to come in, or just so it'll open up bandwidth. That's all.
Yes, Gavin.
Yes, Gavin.
I was setting the desktop to the story overview.
Of course you were.
In case,
of course.
Because I didn't want you seeing my shed, which was on my desktop as my desktop. Sir,
we're just giving you
Your
a
Honor.
Okay, thanks, Gavin.
Totally freaked him out with
That was awesome. All right, so Zach, let me go ahead and hand it over to you because the initial story proposal that was put together, as we explained in the last video.
Well, it wasn't a quick thing to put together.
No, it wasn't, but the video was relatively quick, though not necessarily painless.
Well, I mean, relative to a lot of our videos, it was kind of long. But I'm sure there's a lot of avenues where folks will have suggestions. You should rename this, you should change that, etc. and so forth. What I'd like to do, and you're going to have to understand, actually, before we even get into anything, there's some things you will have to understand about the way this is running. We are literally running NovaMind on the exact same system that we're using to administrate this webinar. Why is that important to you? Well, if I am to navigate and control my way around NovaMind and do things with it while we're talking, Jason is also going to need to steal control from me every now and then to go click on a button over in the classroom because somebody raised their hand or has to go to the bathroom, that sort of thing. So if the first couple of times we do these meetings, control gets a little bit jerky or goes a little bit back and forth, again, just bear with us. We're still kind of ironing out the kinks to this whole thing.
Cool.
Now, all of
Story
that
time? Mutation time? Iteration
Sure, why not?
time?
Why not?
Sweet. Okay.
So at this point, I'd like to kind of open things up for any questions, concerns, suggestions that we're going to have. And I want to tell you, before I even start answering them, by all means, go ahead and start throwing them into the question list. Jason's going to be keeping an eye on that as best he can. But I want to show you how we are going to go about this. As soon as I got to steal all control back away, and I have to try not to destroy anything in this room as I do it, which is...
Now, I will say this, after you show this, the first person that I want to open up the floor to is going to be NATO,
Ah, okay.
because he's been working his butt off on ideas.
Well, here's how we're going to do this. If you have a completely new suggestion that doesn't really augment or change anything here, like if you come up, there should be another race of beings that come in and do stuff, then what we're going to do is drop in a new floating subtopic. Oh, sorry, not floating subtopic. You, over here. All right, we have an animal issue.
Yeah, I'll take care of that.
So I'm going to grab a new floating topic if you have something that's totally new, like so. And then we'll just name it some new thing, and then we'll just go from here. From this point, we can extend, we can branch out, just like we did before. It can be totally new, anything that you suggest. Now, let me go ahead and delete that. If you have a suggestion that augments or changes an existing idea, like let's say, oh, I don't know, you think, this whole first encounter thing, this was just really lame, and we should definitely make some sort of a change to that. What I'm going to do is make a call out to this idea. And if you're using NovaMind, that's Control-Shift-Enter to do that. And then I can discuss your suggestion here, and we just kind of pull it off to the side. You can see how it points back. We can have many of these. So if somebody else has an idea about it, we can drop in another suggestion, like so. And we can point as many of these in as we want. Now, later on, once the meeting is over, I will be going back over this and running kind of an audit, picking and choosing. Of course, I'll discuss as much as I can, what I think we should keep and what we shouldn't. We will try to keep this as democratic as possible, but in the end, there's still got to be some form of singular controlling voice to the matter. So I will be going back over all suggestions and deciding which ones to keep. We'll be discussing them over here and then ironing all that out. And then all of these little call-outs and extra suggestions will just get worked into the story in a video that we'll capture.
Now, real quick, Mr. Thomas Ireland had a question, and that is, do you guys want to talk about gameplay at this stage?
No.
Or just story?
Just story.
Just story. I want to see a very nice, clean, fleshed out story.
Now, that said, if you have some part of the story, now I only say this because I did this a couple of times very, very, very lightly, and it needs to be very, very lightly for you too, where you might have noticed there were a couple of story elements that did kind of, sort of, in a way, roundabout reach to gameplay. If that comes in, that's fine, but the gameplay aspect cannot be a concern at this time.
Yeah, I don't
just
want
so you
it
know.
to be. That's right. I want to have a really rich story that we then move into discussing how do we create an MMO world with game mechanics, etc., that fits this story and fulfills the story to our player. That's very important. And can we discuss things like names, suggestions too?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Sure.
Absolutely. Heck yeah. Because again, what we have to work from is just a base. It's a starting point. And the reason was, as we said in the last video, we did not want to start with just a clean sheet, because then it would be a while until we got to this stage right here. All right, so
While people are doing that, I'm going to go ahead and expand these all back out.
all right, so I'm going to start getting to questions over in the side in just a second. NATO, raise your hand if you are ready to join in. As NATO's been working on a lot of stuff, and Gavin has been working on a lot of stuff. So these are two that I want to get involved very quickly. So now let's see, make sure that NATO is still around. If he's not, we're going to bump him with Gavin first. And those of you that are raising your hand, that's great. We will get to you in just a minute. I just wanted to...
I'm guessing that Chris, by not raising his hand, is not ready.
Yeah, I would say we need to go ahead and bring Gavin in. Gavin, raise that hand of yours just to throw you to the top of the list real quick. There Gavin is. And we'll just come over here and bring Gavin in. And there you go, Zach. So you can begin taking any kind of notes that you need. And go for it, Gavin.
Yeah, this relates mainly to the first encounter section, and kind of touches on the Great Order as well. But basically where I'm coming from on this is that I like my science fiction personally to be grounded in science more than fiction.
Okay.
I like sort of near future sci-fi rather than like it somewhat ties into what you were saying about faster than light travel and how that's achieved, if it's achieved, why it's achieved in the last video. But rather than the probe going out, although do like the image, the probe being sent out, the drone is spotted by Merlon, and it actually discovering the energy signature from the Arcanosite. I was picturing the Mage Wars that happened on Aletheia to culminate in final battle between the factions that you've got there. And this battle involving magical energy is so vast that they actually throw the planet out of its orbit, out of its system, and through deep space at unimaginable speeds. As you were saying, there is powerful magic available on a sort of getting a huge group of powerful magicians together, or musicians, to
play bass
control.
and guitar.
Well, my initial thought was to steer it through space, but actually, rather than that, it would require less magical energy to just protect it from the debris of space, than it would to actually stop a planet, just hurtling out of control. So,
Well, I'm trying to get a grounding for where this would tie in. Would this be like a
well,
result
I'm going
of
to
the
try and
war?
give an.
Actually,
try and give
I think he's talking about this was something that took
zip-
place in the Mage Wars.
Yes, sorry, the Mage Wars. This is This is essentially replacing the first part of your first encounter, rather than the probe going to the Alethians.
Mm-hmm.
I'm picturing literally Aletheia coming to us. It's flying through space, and essentially, as it goes along, it's picking up a trail in its gravity well of all of the debris that's it's passing. It's gradually turning into like a massive planet-sized comet with. Then, as it flies, it comes within range of our sun's gravity well, gravitational pull, and my initial idea was that it hits the Earth and knocks us out of orbit, but it all seemed a bit trite, and also the likelihood of...
Gavin, do you know what the likelihood of our survival would be if something like that occurred?
Exactly.
That was the first thing that came to mind. It's like, well, okay, everybody's dead.
You're a man who likes
yeah.
science, and we were talking about this planet being
I
a lot...
was just trying to get by the planet going through, the emptiness of space without a sun, and these people not freezing to death.
Well, that's magic.
They have the magic. That's the magic, you see. That's why we can't get there. But, no, rather than it striking the Earth, which is a bit trite, aside from being so unrealistic, if it was a near miss, however, the trail of smaller debris that's being pulled along by the planet could buckshot the Earth, essentially.
What's a near miss? Because
potentially,
it's...
Well, between us and Mars is
Whoa.
probably a near miss on those terms.
I would still be quite interested in exactly what sort of scientific results
that would be a heck of an intergalactic golf score, really.
I admit I haven't done the cosmological sums on that one yet, but it seemed more feasible than anyone surviving two planets colliding.
True, but you started this whole thing out about your feel for everything being grounded in science, and Zach had something that was, well, I thought pretty realistic with the idea of a long range probe finds this, and you've gone to using gigantic slingshots to send planets.
I figured it out.
Space.
What killed him was the faster than light travel.
Is that what it was?
Yeah.
I think so. As soon as we said faster than light travel, he was like, "Oh no, there's got to be a whole nother reason." Well, let's see. We don't know of any planets nearby that this is actually taking place. Let's bring the planet to us.
Please keep in mind, Gavin, it was Mr. Bill Gates that said we would never, ever need more than 640 megs, ever. So you can't say we could never travel faster than the speed of light. We don't really know.
Einstein theorized that
You
we can't
realize you
accelerate
just
to
put-
that speed.
Yeah. Anyhow, where the Earth was I?
I really
was,
don't want this
yes.
to turn into an argument about the validity of relativity.
No, I'm trying to drag it back on track, which is hard enough.
Oh, I'm
using
sorry.
my
That's
own
right. 600. And Thomas, thank you for putting that out there. It's 640K, and that's what I meant.
Yeah.
Our conventional RAM, yeah, which is even better. 640K. K. We would never need more than that.
There's more than that in this document.
But anyway.
Anyways.
Okay, so I did number. Now, this is last night in the initial video. This is the first time that you guys are going to get to work with me. People like Lee and Nelson have been able to enjoy this in the past. I stayed nice and quiet, but I will put my thoughts out there, and don't let me
Absolutely.
don't let me offend anybody, because sometimes I can get passionate, and it is obviously no offense meant by anything. I just like getting into it because, well, it's a lot of fun. And I don't like that idea, Gavin.
That's cool.
It's so bizarre. Me personally.
Well,
No matter how the story shapes, I like the idea that these guys are a long ways away from us, and because I really want the concept of exploration and deep space to end up in this somehow.
Right. It gives us the need to have spaceships.
I don't like the idea of, hey, check it out. The Alethians, they're hanging out just right over there. We could take our everyday space shuttle to get there.
Well, no, I was picturing it more in terms of what adding an extra planet to the solar system would do to the whole solar system.
But it's still too close to us.
It would, but that's fine if that's.
But Zach's
a key
putting it
part
here,
of it.
so
Funnily
It's
enough,
here.
It is here.
It's something we can certainly discuss and iron out. So I mean, I don't want to just completely dismiss it out of hand. I don't mind saying that as powerful as I imagined the Alethians being, I never pictured them being powerful enough to knock their entire planet out of orbit with enough velocity to make it across the galaxy, or possibly across the known universe, to somehow magically decelerate and end up in Earth's orbit without just streaking through like the world's fastest oversized comet. Or did I ever imagine them being powerful enough to survive that kind of thing? They're not gods.
That's cool.
But I like where your head's at. I mean, I like the thought that went into it. So,
well, hang on, let's not derail it. What else? Come on, I know.
What else you got?
ideas.
I'm sure you got one or two other things.
There's a few other things in terms, but a lot of them do tend to sort of be based on ideas that at heart are more gameplay related than just general story related. So,
all right. Well, let's do this. Let me let you catch your breath. Let me go ahead now that NATO is back up. Apparently his system exploded.
Awesome.
Oh, okay. Hang on one second, Lee. I will get you back shortly. Let's go ahead and start rotating through people, and then just throw your hand back up, Gavin, when you're ready to jump back in, and we'll just keep rotating so that we can start letting everybody bounce ideas around. Sound good?
Yeah, sure.
Awesome. All right, so let's go ahead and bring in NATO.
Mr. Morris.
Hello. All right, shoot.
Right. Okay. I'm just trying to think of where the best place to start is. I think that an important element of the Elysians is that their civilization has degraded from the past when, in terms of the grandeur of it, 100 or 200 years ago, they were a lot more powerful than they are now. This might be because of the Mage Wars or possibly something before caused this, but back when they had all this, they had a lot more power than they do now. They could send small parties off to nearby habitable planets by group, big group efforts. But now it's very difficult because there aren't that many of them left, and the ones that are left don't know the techniques that the older ones of that race knew. They're not dying out; they're just losing knowledge, and they're losing their abilities, sort of the grander abilities that they used to have. does link into a pre-story arc of what you currently have, aiming to bring in a big bad evil guy per se, who is hostile to both sides. But I'll get into that in a minute. A note on the Terrans, I don't... Honestly, at the moment, Terrans are... Right, they're humans. They're okay. Don't need to think about them. The only real change I'd make is to completely expunge every element of Earth entirely, to the sense of... As in Gears of War, for example, it's humans, but it's never specifically stated that it's Earth and it's humanity.
It's actually the planet Sun.
There's, America and... Well, yeah, exactly. It's not America and Asia and Europe and that kind of thing. I think to me, that's important because there's so human culture that that exists now is so horribly complicated that to take it and expand on it in terms of one world government comes into power. That's all good and fair to say, but what happens with all these other smaller groups and blah, 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 blah. And you don't want to A, end up offending someone, and B, get something wrong. But you can get those elements, the elements that you want, by coming up with an Earth-like culture that isn't humans exactly.
Mm-hmm.
That's my only real note on that. It's a personal choice. I try and stay away from...
I totally agree. I mean, I
because...
actually spent a while going back and forth in my head as to whether or not I wanted this to have anything to do with Earth whatsoever. And then just went ahead and just settled on it just so I would quit thinking about it and I could get something fleshed out. The whole time realizing that the doing away with Earth, so to speak, would just be little more than a name change.
Yeah, exactly. It's not, it's not a massive change, but it just sort of tidies things up. It means that you don't have to kind of go, you don't have to clean up all the mythos, you have to clean up all the political issues and blah, 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 blah. So yeah, apart from that, the Terrans I am very happy with. There isn't much in there that I disagree with greatly. I did have a thought actually on them, which is, this is a bit more arcing in terms of, I think after we finished recording, someone mentioned, as in last night, religion, dimorphic religion between the two groups, and that, the Eleuthians possibly do like religion, they are a bit spiritual and whatnot, but, the Terrans are just sort of corporate and very secular. I thought, no, I don't like that. Switch them around. So, Eleuthians, very secular. They might have spiritual beliefs, but they keep that entirely out of their, out of their laws and out of their politics. It's all kept in personal sense. Whereas Terrans don't. They worship the corporations. They worship brands. They worship kind of sort of ideas almost. They're not. It's not sort of worship in the sense of going to church and whatnot, but you have your brand and you will always buy that brand and you'll never buy anything else from another brand just because it's just what you do. It's not sort of, oh, Nike, how good, awesome you are, you're amazing, you save children, etc. like that. It's just, well, I've always done it. And yeah, or a better example is, I'm a PC, you are a Mac. Grr. There's it's just based off that.
Yeah.
So it's a religious element, but it isn't sort of.
Okay, well, how does that tie into the overall story in some way? I mean, is that something that you think could be? Do you think that's an extraneous thing, or something that really, really needs to tie into the development of the environment?
I think it really depends how much Earth, so in inverted commas, you want to have, because if you do have a large portion of, let's say, the Terran starting area being on Terra, on Earth, then I would have it overbearingly pushing down on the player that you know, you can't look anywhere without seeing some sort of advert, some sort of almost oppressive belittling of other companies and things. It's just sort of very hostile.
You know, I just real quick, I did notice a question roll through a moment ago. John Miller says that this feels more like we're discussing the setting and not really the story. It's one of those things. I think the two are very, very closely related in this case. I don't think you can really discuss one without going into the other. We're trying to establish a grounding, a backstory, and a backstory is, almost by definition, a setting. How did we get to where we are? You've got to explain the environment because the people, the characters, the societies are all culminations of what has taken place in and through the creation of that environment, of that setting. So I don't think it's responsible to consider the setting and the story to be two divergent elements. So I just wanted to go ahead and address that before that scrolled completely off the screen.
Okay, that's cool. But yeah, that's more or less. I've just.
Well, give me just a moment. Just work with me for a minute, because I'm not really in a rush here. This process is just going to take as long as it takes.
As a matter of fact, I'm glad you said that, Zach, and to Mr. Miller as well. In doing something like we're doing right now, this is going to take a lot of time, and I am not planning on breaking this up into, like, you know, we just did an hour, so we'll see you guys in a few days. Let's go again. For those of you that, you know, you get to a point and you get tired and you want to you know, log out and check the video later or come back in a little while, that's completely cool. I want us to invest as much time as we need to right now, as much time as you guys are willing to put into this, and because it's going to take a bunch of hammering. We've done this in the past, and you know, we've easily spent we've spent days before talking about ideas that we've had.
Yeah.
So I wanted everyone to know that I think when I scheduled the class, I put it in the system for 3 hours, and even then, that's not a requirement. Though I may tell everyone to hang on and hit stop on the video to start a new encoding so we don't lose anything. I just wanted to throw
the
that
meeting
in.
may be broken up into a couple of different pieces just to keep it a little lighter on the system. Really, really excessively long videos, especially with a lot of screen panning like we have to do here inside of NovaMind, get fairly large. And so we may need to manage that.
Man, let me tell you what, Zach.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people out here that I know, and then there's definitely a bunch of new names that I don't know. But Mr. Hans Von, I love this guy. He said, this is the base. If you don't have the base right, then the rest is a waste of time.
Well, it's more than that. I mean,
I still love that.
No, it is. But it's like every little thing that we can iron out here will give us ideas and solid grounding to start building these environments that players are going to have to go through. Like, okay, let's say we take this idea that NATO has thrown out about religions. Awesome. So if we really hook onto that and we start building out the environment for the Terrans, we're going to need something like some sort of chapel that they can go into. And maybe this chapel is literally covered in some form of advertisement. Maybe it's built on the form of advertisement. But now we've got all these ideas just out of that for building something for a player to go and experience. That's why setting and story, at least in terms
So
of
you
a game,
get religious statute by contributing to advertisement.
Exactly. Like tithing is buying products. You know, it's just something like that. You just take consumerism and just ram it to as far as it'll possibly go and stick it into something and call it a Bible. It's really twisted, but it's also kind of cool. But because you do things like that, you suddenly get a clearer idea of this physical environment that you have to define so that a player can interact with it. That's why you can't have a story and a setting as two different things. It all has to come together.
Yeah.
All right, so NATO, I want you to bear with me for just a moment, because what I need to do is start jotting some of this down, and we have noticed, at least over here on this end, that if I start doing really fun and interesting things with NovaMind while you're talking, you start to get all garbled up, like you're coming to us from the bottom of the ocean or something. So,
right, okay.
Yeah, so let's say, I mean, I'm just going to leave this little flag here for the idea of doing away with Earth.
Yeah, I think that's enough, just
Yeah.
as an inspirational giver, so that when we come back and we continue working on this.
Yeah, and I mean, if along the way somebody comes up, you know, well, you should name the Earth this, that, or the other, or, you know, this Earth-like planet or whatnot, then I can just make another call out off of that and go from there. Now, work with me real quick, NATO. You're thinking that the Terrans should have the kind of religious background. Let's explore that for just a minute. Let's expand on that. So what I'll do is I'll make a whole new branch off, And let me see. Well, let me graph that to the other side.
Yep.
Yes, of course it will.
And let's just call it religion.
Yeah. Actually, let's just start here. Society, and then we'll branch from there. Oh, look at us go! Ah, it was already there. I knew it was in there somewhere. I just didn't see it. So I'll just branch from down here. Now I did do a save as on this file, so I will have the original. I can go compare it against this one. Religion. All right, now let's talk about this. Just in terms of your idea, there's no wrong answers here. Of course, we can change or eliminate any of these. Go back over some of the things you said regarding this religion.
All right. I think the most important thing is it's not based off it's not based off spirit. It's not spiritual. It's entirely commercial. It's entirely capitalist. It's an expansion of what we have today in terms of brand loyalty, but taken to a complete extreme. It's not a.
the Terran are the Ferengi?
That's
awesome. I'm sorry. Nice, Brad. I'm sorry, NATO. Keep on.
Yeah, we are we're
No, it's all right. I'm just trying
the
to
Ferengi. They just need the big ears.
Phrasing.
So no, and actually that may be enough to get us started. So what are you thinking about the overall climate? Does everybody follow some form of religion? Are there a bunch of little tiny individual sects for the different corporations?
I think it's describing it as a religion is the best way of describing it, but I don't sort of perceive it as being a.
Okay, let me throw it a different way. Let me try to spin that a different way. I have kind of a unique background when we start discussing religion, because right now I live in southern United States. In the southern United States, honestly, this part of the world where I live, there are I can't even say almost. In this town alone, there are more churches than there are gas stations. And different churches, different denominations. They're everywhere. So, what if you take this idea and kind of spin it around to... you could go one in two directions, and I'm just going to kind of throw these out very, very generically. You could say that all the corporations decided one day, maybe some sort of meeting, some sort of dark closed door sort of thing, that in terms of control, it makes more sense if you can get the people to zealously follow some religious style belief just about the idea of spending and corporatism, and maybe even call it that's your motion. It's called corporatism, or something like that. Or do we have all of these different corporations each vying to get the largest congregation, if you will, by saying, come follow us and ignore our competitors?
I think the second one.
Yeah.
I think the way I see this, sort of coming about is, in an Earth-like civilization, you'll have religion, like we have today, in the past, and that degrades over time, or in my mind it does. As technology improves, people start questioning whether or not, because ancient texts in the world today, they're written so long ago. If you compare it to the one world and modern technology, you start to see fractures in the difference. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I hear what you're saying.
Yeah, and that will theoretically only get worse as time goes on. So human subculture and kind of not subculture, subconscious, the sort of collective subconscious of humanity needs to find a new religion, and they find it in
corporate culture.
In the corporate culture, in acquiring goods, acquiring money, spending it, having a flashy car, having a nice watch.
Materialism. Materialism becomes the new religion.
Yeah, exactly.
I do want to throw this out just real quick.
Sorry.
Hey, bear with me. Just hit pause for just a moment. David Markham Jones had a really neat thing he threw into the questionnaire. He said a society with magic is likely to have less use for gods. Why believe in say Thor when a guy who makes thunderbolts rain from above lives next door? And that's such an interesting point and ties in beautifully with what you were saying, NATO. How the the Elethians can afford to be secular. They haven't really needed in their society to find means outside of their existing condition to explain things like life and the natural elements and whatnot. They've always had control over those. They pretty much are their own gods. And George LeCaix says religion exists because it answers questions for some people that can't.
No, wrong one.
Wrong one. Okay, yeah, sorry. All the text is jumping, and I'm like halfway across the room. Wouldn't contact with the Elethians spawn a religion in the Terrans? It very well could, and I like the idea. Besides, everything that you guys see in this web, I've always imagined being pre-story. We're not living through this. This is not what's going to take place throughout the game. This is what happened to get us where we are today.
No, it's just what George brings up. The reason I pointed that to you is I thought that was very interesting because how would we respond? Or some of us respond to come across somebody who is, raining firebolts from the sky.
Exactly. Well, I'm kind of getting there. For those of you who, I'm going to assume that most of you, and I know that at least one of you didn't, and I'm just, you know who I'm talking to, and I'm just shaking my head in abject disbelief. But I'm going to assume that most of you saw the film Avatar. Now, of course, I fell in love with the movie, and I got into all of the extra mythos of it. In fact, Jason picked me up a really nice book that kind of takes place in the Avatar universe. It's like the survivalist guide for Pandora or something. And it goes into a lot of extra detail that I think is covered in the special edition about the response on Earth to the discovery of Pandora. And how there's like this kind of splinter group on Earth who believes that Pandora is like the last bastion of spirituality and is this kind of sacred ground, and they've become this really zealous movement of people.
Exactly what was just racing through my head when I saw what George had posted in the questions.
And I can really see the people of Earth, seeing this wondrous power in these people and reaching out and going, oh my goodness, this is what we've been waiting for. It's a sign. While the people of Alethea are just completely aloof to that. And in their own way, they see that as being kind of a primitive thing.
So sounding a lot like V.
Maybe?
No, it's just...
I haven't... Okay, my exposure to V is very limited. I remember the original show when I was a very small kid.
Yeah, that's why I was looking at you. It's like, I saw the original many years ago and barely remember it, and I didn't see the new one.
Yeah, I was a very little kid. I remember the weird lady who looked like... Ursa from Superman who ate rats, and then I haven't really got into the new one, even though I know I should because Morena Baccarin is in it. But yeah. So, okay, we've got a note there about the religion. I think we've got enough of an exploration there.
Come back into certain areas. Nato, do you have another area that you'd like to touch on?
Well, let me actually do this. Do we even have a societal branch over here to reflect this? I don't think we do. I mean, kind of, with the feudal system here. Let me take this and I can branch off of it. So, grab here, and let's just say society, like so. And I'll take this whole feudal system thing and I'll branch that off of society. Now, if you're, if you're trying to get the swing of Nova Mind yourself, I just grabbed the little grafting handle and dragged that over onto the new society extension, so that just works. And, very secular. And then from that, in just 1 second, we'll say no real need for gods.
Now, David Markham Jones I thought this was interesting.
It says, by the same token, Elethians are likely to find technology fascinating. Wouldn't it be cool to summon fire without having to have inner peace and focus? Use a lighter. Absolutely, and that ties back into some things that we're getting into in mass media now. Like I keep thinking Harry Potter, Ron Weasley's dad, who was just totally freaked out by the Muggle technology. They have like cars and motorcycles and all this other stuff that you and I think are totally mundane, but they're totally into it because we've almost found a way to produce magic as far as they're concerned. And so you just take that to the next level. I mean, look at this ray gun that they've built. I mean, I have to focus with all my might to do it, and they just have to point and click. So we could actually take that and we could branch off as well and just say part of their society could result in a fascination with technology. If not an affinity. I mean, they won't have that. Fascinity? Look, I'm making up words now.
Sweet.
Fascination with technology. But on the other end of that, it stands to reason that you'd want to pop over here to this side and say that there's going to be a fascination with magic as well.
Yeah, the people that would do anything, pay anything.
Oh yeah,
to
you're
harness
gonna have your
that
really
technology.
I mean, especially those. What's the classic one? The people who want to live forever.
That's right.
They'll see like that healing magic and be like, I must have that. Fascinating with magic power.
And it's forbidden for the other guys to share any of that. But then there are certain people that do.
That's true. And that's an interesting thing. Now, I had already mentioned that we're getting some sort of intermingling, that that some magical abilities are starting to appear. But that's kind of an interesting concept, to just go ahead and say outright that at least the upper echelon of mainstream society for the Alethians view that as just a forbidden or evil thing. So,
Oh, Andrew. He wants magic-imbued nanobots. Me too, actually. Hey, I like my nanotechnology.
I'm going to keep using the word Terrans right now until we come up with another word. That way I can just do a search replace en masse. So if you guys are wondering, well, I thought you were getting rid of that. Well, we are. I'm fine with getting rid of it. But since we don't have anything to put in its place, I'm not going to stress it too much.
That's awesome.
What do we have? Techno-necromancy, controlling of dead machines. But the machines were already dead! So now you...
But were they?
Well, actually, no, you take that in a slightly different direction. We've already got cyborgs, right? And I'd already discussed earlier, as I fly over to the other side of my outfit, that in our electronic intelligence section, we have a human brain or body parts
Right.
wet-wired into a computer-machine interface. Okay, what about an undead brain? Now you literally have a cyber zombie. You bring somebody back to life and then start to graft cyborg parts onto them. Now what do you get?
Whoa, you just blew my mind.
Exactly. I mean, zombies are cool. Everybody loves zombies. Now imagine a cyborg zombie.
Well, that's it. We need to stop on this and start production of the cyber zombie game right now.
We'll have to call the game Cyber Zombies. Zomborgs. I like Cyber Zombies better. It rolls off the tongue.
They're both awesome.
They are both awesome.
Okay, so, all right, we touched on those. Any other major areas real quick, NATO?
Right, yes. You feel free to say, come back to this, but I have a sort of prehistory, which is a bit off the wall and introduces a sort of third race, which is it's meta plot, it's meta history that doesn't really affect. It's not something that the characters would know, but it affects the development of the world. And
Okay, hang tight just a second.
brings in a
Hang tight. Let me do this. Let's grab my main branch here. Let me insert a little floating guy, which I'll drag down here to the middle. And here's what I'm going to call this: proposed meta history. I have no idea if by what you've said that's going to be an accurate term, but we'll go with it anyway. And just go ahead and roll with it. What are some of your ideas?
Right, okay. The timeline that I'm thinking of would go vaguely as such. A long, long time ago, not
In a galaxy far, far away, yeah.
Basically, there was an ancient, and when I say ancient, I don't mean in the same way that you've referenced ancient before on the other side of the mind map. I mean properly ancient. A very warlike race who had amazing technology, far beyond whatever the Terrans would ever have. And that technology developed through conflict.
This
so
is
a lot
sounding
of
more
that
and more like Halo by
technology-
the second.
But a lot of that technology is, for warfare, it's quite horrible. Now, what happened was there was a civil war occurred. I'm not entirely sure what would have caused the civil war, but basically they ran out of people to fight, so they started fighting each other. Would be a vague, idea. One group decided to hide a stash of technology, or possibly, I was thinking, WMDs, but sort of on a much grander scale. Possibly some sort of fuel on a planet, far out of this war, far out of their empire. The idea being that they'd have a bastion they could just fall back on if everything went wrong. However, the Civil War basically ended up killing that entire race out.
Okay.
Now, there was a bit of a gap. The planet that they decided to place this sort of cache on is Elysia.
Yeah, figured.
And the Elysian race evolved from sort of microbes and things that were left behind when this race came and placed these things on the planet and then buggered off. So they are. That's where Elysians come from in a biological sense. It was a long, millions and millions of years ago. And the Arcana site is this. They're not. This is where it gets a little difficult. I like the idea of fuel, or possibly sort of ammunition.
Well, you just say it's a power source, because you could use it in either direction. Yeah. So the same thing that you use to power the engines of your ship could be put into some large cannon and fired at a planet,
It's a bit like uranium. It's about storing uranium somewhere. So
exactly.
You could use it for fuel. You could use it for.
Yeah, they use it to power a submarine or an aircraft carrier, but also they put it in bombs and blow big things up.
But it's the idea is it's entirely artificial. It would never occur in naturally in on any planet because it's entirely synthetic, and that's why you only find it on Elysia, because it's the last bits that were left from this ancient race that we know of. There might be another bastion on entirely the other side of the galaxy that has another race with these sort of powers, but that's not important. So that's where the Elysian's power comes from.
This is interesting.
There's quite a big time gap.
You're kind of paralleling the idea of the Forerunners in Halo, and there was in the game Free Space the same thing happened, but I can't remember what they called them because I played that game years and years and years and years ago.
It's also kind of like Mass Effect.
It's also kind of like Mass Effect in another way. Yeah. So it's a theme that we do see recurring throughout science fiction, that there was this ancient all-powerful race that came before. So, but I dig that. I don't think that makes it invalid. I think it actually makes it interesting because it's a theme that we've kind of come to accept, and it is very cool.
Okay. The rest of the storyline kind of does tie into the current storyline, but I'll just continue on from here.
Is this still just continuing on with the timeline?
It does continue on, but it's sort of this bit can be sort of more slipped into the previous Elysian history. So it's sort of a subcategory.
Okay. I can do that. Please continue.
Right. The Elysians evolve. They gain these powers, and they realize that they can send people to other planets if they get a lot of them together and they work very hard, and they might exhaust themselves for weeks, but they won't kill any of themselves. They won't exhaust themselves to the point of death, and they'll send people off and they'll have very fleeting contact with them, but not sort of a lot of contact because it takes so much sort of essence to do so. And there are two sort of powerful magi who have fundamental disagreement. One of them says that we should conserve our energy, we should conserve our sort of power, and only sort of travel when we need to, and only go to very, very nearby planets, and try and sort of teach ourselves to have a two-way sort of transport, try and build an empire, basically. Very slowly, very slowly. The other one thinks that basically the grass is always greener on the other side. He wants to send loads of different parties out there as far as possible and go and find greener grass elsewhere.
Yeah, you've literally
So they
just
have-
defined
they have-
a conservative branch and a liberal branch for the idea of,
Yeah,
of
exactly.
exploring other worlds.
Exactly. Now, what happens in the end is, at this point in the storyline, I think you don't have good and evil magic, per se. People know that necromancy exists, and they can use it. It's not forbidden. It's just not done. It's a taboo, opposed to being evil.
Yeah, but my problem with that, before I even write it down or try to work that, is that, when something is not done, and it's something you just don't do that, over time that eventually becomes evil. Society defines evil, and if we've gone hundreds, even tens of years by saying, well, this is just something you do not do, then it becomes bad, it becomes negative, and if it becomes negative enough, it becomes evil, and then you just completely try to shun it and keep it away. So while I see what you're saying, I really do think that the forbidden powers should be viewed, at least by the higher majority of Alethian society, as something that is evil, that gets you in kind of the outcast frame of reference.
Right. Once something becomes socially unacceptable, by definition, it is bad or evil.
Yeah, this is still quite far from the current setting, as it were. But yeah, it could actually be already be sort of classed as evil. But the mage who thinks that they should go out and explore more decides to take a small group of his followers and try and send them as far as they can, and in the process, he makes the decision to use everything he has at his disposal. So he uses all these powers that are considered evil or taboo, or however you want to put it at that point, and he completely drains sort of hundreds of his followers, to send a very small number of them to another planet. It's very, very far away, and he fails, or he thinks he's failed at least. He kills all his followers. The other ones, he can't find them. They're gone. They've disappeared. They're not where they should be, and they're not left on the planet. So he doesn't know what's happened. Because he's basically killed hundreds of people, he gets sentenced to death, which is important later on. Now, time passes. The Mage Wars happen. The necromancers are defeated, and they decide. There's some ancient texts from sort of within the subculture of the necromancers that mention this ancient sort of progenitor of the necromancy magic that he saw no problem using it. He's kind of like a what's the word? I want to say Messiah, but that's entirely the wrong word. He's the guy that first started that movement, and they, the necromancers in the current day decide the only way they can win is by bringing him back. And he's been dead for hundreds of thousands of years almost, or something like that. He's been dead for a long, long time. So it's going to take a lot of energy and a lot of time and effort to bring him back. This can be, I'm thinking at this point, this is sort of actual sort of quest player plot. That the necromancers are trying to bring this guy back, and it's your job to stop them. In my envisioning, the players fail. This guy comes back, so the necromancers bring him back. It's some sort of the final attack on the necromancer's stronghold, and they think that the players think they've defeated everyone and they've won, and suddenly from the pile of bones rises this horrible being of necromancy and just sort of starts absolutely wrecking everything. the point is that this Magi that's come back to life it's not him, or it's not entirely him, because he's been dead so long, and sort of his, I don't want to use the word soul, essence I think is a better term. His essence has been wandering for so long out there that he's basically gone mad. He's gone completely insane.
I'm like stuck in Chronicles of Riddick now. He's not human. He's a wholly half dead.
And he comes back to life and he thinks, I'm just going to kill absolutely everything. I had the idea that sort of almost a shard of the ancient race has been imbued in him somehow. So he has this warlike, completely hostile essence inside him. He has all these powers from ancient times ago when powers were greater. But he's still weak because he's only just come back from being dead for so long. He has to rebuild. Sort of like, almost like the Mummy films. You know, the undead comes back to life and he has to spend a couple of weeks getting back on his feet.
Like Mortos the
Yeah,
Soul
he would
Stealer.
be the big bad evil guy. Yeah.
Or Voldemort.
He'd be the big bad evil guy. Everyone has to come together to defeat. You could even have him turn on Magi, the necromancers, in a sort of
Sure. Yeah, you
almost in a
basically
rage of,
defined
why
Voldemort.
did you bring me
really.
back? I've never read the Harry Potter books.
Well, you should. I mean, for kids' books, they're actually quite good.
I don't know. I tried reading them, and I just couldn't.
Well, I'm only saying this because if you really overly explore the idea of a dark mage who is evil, was killed, and then a group of really zealous followers desire to bring him back and follow his every whim, you have just defined one of the most popular magical stories in modern history. Just so you know. What do we got? Arcanocite can be processed into a drug. I love it.
I love that a lot.
I love it. I see sparkling blue dust that we snort.
Yep.
I see Bioshock, but
The Terrans.
Oh yeah, man. Zydrate comes in a little glass vial. Heck yeah.
Okay.
What else do you? Do you have any other primary themes you want to explore?
Not massively.
I'm gonna throw this
There's
in,
stuff,
and
it's not massively important.
real quick, I don't mean to be disrespectful of your idea because I think it's really good, but I'm gonna throw this in as a reminder to myself. Actually, let me do it this way. I'm gonna grab probably this whole branch right here, and concern Voldemort. I'm a little worried that we just basically created Voldemort right there. And you don't necessarily have to read the books. Go watch the films, and I think you'll still get the idea. And while I love the idea of borrowing from as many mythoses as you can because it gives people common ground. I think you can overplay your hand, and then at that point it really does feel like you get the negative connotation of stealing ideas, where you move from borrowing to just taking it and over abusing. But again, I like the overall idea. I like the theme and the idea behind it. And there's a huge question from Keaton Van Auken. It says,
well, yeah, a little bit. Go ahead.
do you want to try to read the whole thing? Let's see. I guess I'm not the only one thinking about it. What if Terrans couldn't inherently gain magical powers from Arcanocite, but a refined and processed form of Arcanocite, maybe Arcan X, can be used in moderation to give Terrans temporary magical abilities? As a result, there's an underground of Arcan X addicts who take as much as they can get. These addicts gain unpredictable yet potent abilities, while also destroying their bodies. In extreme cases, their bodies turn into zombie-like husks with powerful abilities which will do anything to get more Arcan X.
I love it.
I love it. I think that's a fantastic way to go about it. And then, you could do something very similar on the Alethian side if you want to kind of balance it out, especially with the idea of cybernetics. Because let's just assume, and this is actually something reflected in the role-playing game Shadowrun, for those of you who were fortunate enough to play that and know what it is. But let's assume that you have to have a limited, or a certain amount of connection to your essence, your soul, what have you, to really tap into your magical abilities. But the more you start grafting this technology to your body, the more you start to wear away that connection to your own spirit. And so you literally make yourself less magically potent as you start grafting more and more technology to yourself. But because the Alethians have this just absolute fascination with technology, it is happening, and there are people who are constantly, Alethians who used to be so magical are addicted to this, this surgery, this augmentation of body and self and mind, and making themselves what they see as more, because the grass is always greener.
Yeah. I'm just picturing the wonderful world of the black markets and all.
Oh, sure.
Get into this kind of stuff.
I'm so stuck in the whole repo thing now. Let's see. How could I explore that? Let me give me just a second, folks, before we keep talking about some other stuff. Because again, if I start playing too heavily with Novamind, we can really start garbaging up the audio. So let me do another little floating topic here. And we'll get this kind of slid out of the way for just a moment. And let's call this power crossover. And that's just what I'm the term for now. Now, from here, let's say Terrans. Again, I'm totally cool with getting away from the term Terrans, but as of yet have nothing better, we're just going to stick with it. They cannot inherently have magical abilities. Drug made with arcanicite. I'll try to capitalize that whenever I can. Arcanicite. Forgive my spelling, guys. So there you go. Drug made with arcanicite grants temporary powers. Terribly addictive.
Can be unstable.
Unstable. Destroys the body. Destroys the mind. Why not? I still can't spell the word destroys. Give me a big round of applause. And, I would also, designer variants of the drug. I can't spell today at all. So you can have all kinds of fun with that.
And then a second ago, just something for consideration, David Markham Jones said that a Terran drug suppresses magic powers, allowing Alethians to use technology. Also, a cause for causes.
That's another interesting thing where it could be that magical signal, magical aura that the Alethians have because of their overexposure to arcanicite throughout their entire lifetimes does cause a difficulty
accepting
cybernetic
graphs
exactly, and perhaps it even goes so far as to make it difficult for them to be too close to and use computers very well. Who knows? It's like you keep trying to tap on the keyboard, but something about your personal signal makes it break the connection. I don't know. I'm just I'm daydreaming, but I do like that. Give me just a second, though. Keep that one in mind. Let me graph this over to the other side. And let me make a whole bunch of subtopics for no reason, because I tried to hit the delete key and missed because of your keyboard, Jason. I blame you.
Okay, fair enough.
Let's see. I'm going to say perhaps. Let's go from inhibits to suppresses. I think that's the word that we used. All right. I think that's enough to get us kind of going from those ideas.
Okay, and you were going to say,
What
NATO?
else? What have I already forgotten?
No, NATO was about to say something in regards to this.
Yes.
That Terrans might sort of kidnap and give these drugs to Letheans and then use them as slaves almost. Because I did have a slight idea of whether or not Elysians would have human rights, or whether Terrans would have Elysian rights. And the...
Well, I can actually picture both sides being generally considered outcasts in their own home territories. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you're a human, I feel like I should start using finger quotes with that. If you're a human and you're walking around on the surface of Elythia, you're a stranger. You're not fully accepted, and no, you don't have the same rights. And the same would be true of an Elythian on human territory. I mean, and that kind of ties back into, there was a terrible war, and while we can sign as many treaties as we want, there's still going to be some animosity there. That stuff just doesn't disappear.
Well, it gets kind of close to an idea I'd like to play around with, which gets back to the way the necromancers were treated.
Okay, let's do this. Hey, Chris, I'm going to go ahead and put you back on mute just to cut down on clicking noises and all. And we'll be back with you. No, it's all good. Thanks, man. And let's see. There we go. And then let me go ahead and turn the floor over to you, Lee.
Well, what I was thinking was with the necromancers, because they were kind of shunned by the mage lords, pigeonholed to the southern hemisphere, and then they began this war with the Terrans. It kind of polarizes them into two different groups. The traditionalists who believe in their ways were the best and they don't want to change, and the futurists who embrace Terran technology in any form that they can acquire.
Mm-hmm.
And then having a little bit of conflict within the own ranks of the necromancers.
Well, I can actually, I think you could extend that into all of Elythia. I think both sides are going to experience something similar, where the Elythians, because the fascination with technology as a whole, I think you would end up with groups of people both on the social exile necromancer side and in the traditionally the followers of the mage lords, who are in some way heavily intrigued by technology and wanting to follow it, and those who think, oh no, that's evil, that's otherworldly, that's outside the scope of our powers, it's not right, etc. and so forth. Where at the same time, I think you'd find the same thing on the human side of things as well, in terms of magic, where you'd have those, I want magic and I love it and I worship it and it's a sign from the heavens and all that kind of thing, or others who just outright see it as a threat to be removed. These people are too powerful, they are going to try to take us over, we can't allow them to have a foothold in our territory, allowing them to exist is dangerous enough. So, and I think both sides of that could be easily reflected in their native societies.
Right. Another part would be on the Terran side with the cyborgs, because I like playing with that idea, where the cyborgs in general are considered by the populace as less than human, but having a subculture of the young Terrans that look at it almost like body art, with piercing and tattooing, where they consider themselves more than human, and it becomes a bit of a strife inside of itself.
Kind of a counterculture thing.
Exactly. Not quite getting it to the point where, we're talking Cylons and they go off to their own world, but because that gets us into the black market and all kinds of fun things that we could do with the underworld.
Okay.
Fair enough.
I'm going to get, let's bring in Mr. Andrew Brown. Yeah, here. Andrew.
Hey.
Hey, what you got, man?
Yeah, I've only got one main question, and it kind of is. It's not really about the story, although because it's kind of a big question, it can really influence like how the story goes. But Zach said last night that both the Alethians and the quote-unquote Terrans are both human in form. And is that still up in the air? Are you
That's totally up in the
undecided
air.
about that?
Totally up in the air. Give us your thoughts.
Well, I think it's a big thing. Like I think it's going to be a massive thing if you won't be able to distinguish which is which. You know, just sort of to look at. Are you talking anatomically or just obviously they're going to look different in like clothes and stuff like that. But are you talking like anatomically they're actually going to be the same? Like if you just had two standing side by side, would you be able to tell the difference?
I would like there to be some kind of a subtle difference, but I wasn't thinking something as outlandish as, the Alethians having completely different colored skin with elongated ears and tails and 3 fingers instead of 5 and that sort of thing. Now, if there end up being subtle differences, if it came down to the difference between a human and an elf where there were just long ears, that's okay. One of the first things that I came across was borrowing a little bit from like the Dune mythos where this exposure had done something to the eyes, making it very apparent when you just look at somebody that they've at the very least been exposed to arcanosite throughout their entire lives.
Right. Well, I had an idea. Since if we're going to go down the road that they might, be very, very similar in, anatomically, then I would think there would definitely be some story points where you would get Alethians, covert Alethians, and covert Terrans going over to each other's planets or whatever, and I don't know, getting up to some shenanigans.
Absolutely.
Like, I'm not coming up with these stories, but I just think that maybe that might be something for other people to think about.
Well, you're also venturing. We're so far into this. Not to irritate Fat Gav any more than I have to, but we're into this realm of science fiction that's so fictional that it kind of almost wraps back around to fantasy. But there's no reason why, even if they did look different, you couldn't argue that humans could find some means via genetic engineering or something to cause someone to look like an Alethian.
Me personally, but at the end of the day, I want to get everybody's thoughts on this, so I'm not going to pull the old CEO card on this one. But I would definitely like to see, different looking. I mean, if we start thinking of the game itself, I'd like to be able to choose different races, different models, different looks. Me personally, but for the Alethians, one of the things I believe that Zach had placed in the magic area was shapeshifters. So a shapeshifter could easily make themselves look like a Terran for doing, shenanigans, as you said. And then there could be some sort of technology that the Terrans have generated that, almost like how you have like an invisibility cloak, but some sort of cloak that changes your appearance or whatever.
I'll do you one slightly better. We still remember we took the time and effort and ingenuity to recall that we should have the technological form of magic, which is nanotechnology.
Oh, there you go.
So you could just make it up off the top of your head and say we have nanites that can restructure your at least your outward anatomy and morphology. Could be extremely painful too.
Oh, absolutely.
But this hurts like hell. But when you're done, you could look like something else.
Well, we can get a little bit crazy. Terrans have cyborg technology. We can make computerized brains. Kidnap some of the Alethians, replace them with a computer brain, remotely control them from Terra.
Yeah, I mean, the possibilities are just, they're endless. They just go on and on and on. So we actually kind of have to be careful in that, because you could just branch out in far too many directions.
Well, I was also just thinking at it from a design point as well, just thinking in my brain, like, I'm sure there would be, like, some visual distinct differences, but yeah, that's cool.
Me personally, my vote would be for there definitely being visual differences between them.
I think the big thing I wanted to get across, and it's like, while I said from the outset that I wasn't necessarily staunch about the belief, I will go back, I will kind of retract some of that and say that I don't want a situation where the Alethians look like some form of a monster, or some really outlandish creature with 3 arms, 6 legs, and tails, and 2 heads and things. Versus the humans, which look very much like you and I. I want there to be enough common ground in their overall morphology so that they're humanoid in form.
Right.
maybe they could have tattoos, or I don't know.
Sure, or anything. Or okay, so they end up with different colored skin. Maybe they do have some sort of tail, or backwards bending knees. Or, was it tri-hinged legs, that sort of thing.
Yeah, but I won't worry about concept art.
Exactly,
right now.
exactly. That's its own thing. But just know going in, I'm not really locked into them actually looking completely like each other.
Mm-hmm.
But it was something that I toyed with in my head, because I can see pros and cons to both sides of that argument.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking as well.
Well, on the one side of it, it is nice to have something that is totally new. I have my own. These are very, very personal reservations. If you're only going to have two races, with making one look extremely different, because I think people, when they play a game, want difference. They want something that is not themselves and cooler. And what I don't want to have happen is for the Alethians to end up looking so quote unquote cool that everybody wants to play an Alethian and not as many people want to play the humans. I'd like to avoid that, and I think that could easily be done if you made them look too cool in a way.
Well, I mean,
but at the same time,
you balance it, because at the same time, if the Terrans had because the Terrans is going to have technology that would appeal to me.
Sure.
So, I'm going to be looking at the technology side closely, because I'm going to be more interested. I mean, that's in World of Warcraft. That's how I play. I look for what's an advantage to me as far as how I like to play.
And then I go back over and I see all these people for the Alliance who suddenly decided to play Worgen.
Yeah, but I still see.
It's like, oh god.
Absolutely, and I still see plenty of goblins running around. I still see plenty of humans running around if I head over towards the Alliance side. So it's not like nobody at all signed up to be a human,
Well, but when you think about it, day one, when World of Warcraft opened, how many people rolled the Night Elf as opposed to, say, a human?
I don't know. I'd have to ask Blizzard.
But it's the newness of it that you have to worry about, especially when you get a new type of character and magic.
I go back to, it comes down to the gamer. Because if the gamer sees that some of the passive traits that they're going to pick up as a human are going to outweigh what they might pick up as a night elf, and they're traits that benefit the way they want to play, then a gamer is going to go that way, as opposed to someone who's like, ooh, look how cute I am. I'm going to do this as a role-playing type thing where I'm going to, talk the language and all that good stuff.
Well, and again, what I just want to make sure everybody's completely clear on my concerns in that regard. They're very personal to me, and I totally acknowledge that not everybody thinks that way. Now, somebody did ask, and I just totally randomly fell across this question, so if I've skipped your question, I don't mean anything by it. Let me see if I can make sure I don't lose it. Yeah, why do we have to stay with the idea of the Terrans as being human? We don't really, but I want one side of this to be human. I'm very pro on that, because I don't want to end up with a situation where you get to choose between these two races which are entirely alien and not anything you can relate to. I think it helps the player get more into the spirit of the world, be able to accept what's going on, if there is some sort of common ground, even if they choose not to be on that side of the conflict. To know that there is a people, a society, a race that they can relate to and say, all right, well, there are humans. I can kind of understand how this came about, that came in contact with this other group. I think that grounds it and makes it all more believable.
Yeah, and Andrew also has a very good point that he just throws in, which is, Terrans don't have to look too human. Even if they are our descendants, technology, bioengineering may have made them look different anyways.
Oh, and I would love, if we want to go the road of it's important to look different, there's no way we'd be able to make it to this deep into the future of technology and whatnot without some significant bioengineering. We're already exploring that today. You see people that get new, like, elongated teeth grafted into their jaw. People get bones grafted onto their skull to make them look like they have horns. I can only see that getting worse and worse and worse and worse. So, maybe the people who do want to look like elves literally have new ears grown and grafted onto the sides of their head. Or you go all the way into some of the other kind of science fiction where you have entirely new appendages grafted onto your body, either cybernetically or biologically. You could have all kinds of fun with that in terms of the overall look of the quote-unquote humans.
Okay, Andrew, is there anything else that you wanted to discuss?
No, that was it.
Okay.
But just saying, you guys are doing a great job, so Thanks.
Well, thank you. I mean,
Thank you.
it's an iterative process. I mean, we're just really, as you know, we're just now coming up on the 24-hour mark that we even really started this. So, we're trying to cram as much in as we can, as quickly as we can, see how this thing evolves and takes shape. There's definitely been some awesome ideas that I've heard tonight, which is fantastic.
Well, someone just asked, how do you define being human? Very generically, look at yourself in a mirror. We are humans right now while we talk, and that's kind of the generic base that I consider the humans I'm referring to starting out from. Just so you guys know.
With the exception of Andrew, he's not human. Not
Andrew Malloy.
Yeah, not the Andrew we have.
Yeah, there's only 4 Andrews in
I
here.
know there's so many. Okay, Andrew. Well, thank you very much, sir.
can I-
And I will go ahead and mute you. Nice talking with you.
Okay.
And
Bye.
Bye.
Put
And
his hand down.
put his hand down. And
Mohammed El Zayat, which, by the way, if we butcher names, we apologize in advance. It's very difficult to for our unilingual selves to pronounce every name out there on the planet. But Mohammed, good to meet you.
Good to meet you too, Zach. I'm really glad to talk to you. I'm really honored as well. Actually, I got like a couple ideas to the story that contributes to the story. Although it could be not like, how can I say, not like contribute. I mean, I was actually thinking about contributing to the the encounter. The first encounter. I was thinking like, could it be much more coincidental? Like, for example, when you look at the first encounter, like the terrain is sending out the exploration kind of droid, and then it discovers an energy signature. Now, my idea is actually about. I usually love that the player forms or shapes the history of the game. I mean, even like. For example, you get into the game, and for example, the first players of the game, they get into the game, they shape more history, and they get into historical depths, for example, forming new societies, forming new historical lines, for example, and so on and so forth. That even the new players, when they come in, they have actually start learning that history live from the game. So I was thinking something like, having an external race that is. That they are actually kind of barbarian race that are completely unknown to the Terran people and the excuse me right now the language here the
Elethians.
Elethians. Thanks a lot. Sorry about that.
No problem.
So and the Elethians people, and for example, those barbarian people, they actually got the same kind of industrial explosion that we got somewhere in the 19th, 18th century, and then they actually got even having kind of a technology that they got on a faster pace than ours, that they got actually a very nice high technology, although they couldn't get out, for example, of the style of the steampunk, let's say. And for example, they were actually trying to release probes all around and trying to find out other how can I say, other planets, other planets or other, how can I say, societies and so on. And for example, by very coincidental luck, one of those probes actually lands on the Terrans guys. And then when they are actually trying to, they actually several of those landing on the Terran lands or whatever planet, they are actually trying, for example, to investigate. They tried actually to investigate more and more, and they couldn't actually have a clue about it. And then, for example, when they tried to predict the trajectory by coincidental luck, they actually find those oh man, let me get that. How was written actually? The Ithilanian or
the Elethians?
The Elethians, thanks. Oh man, I'm sorry about that. It's completely. I have actually troubles with names, by the way, so
No problem.
excuse me for that. So, then afterwards, like, well, while they people are actually in the middle of the war, we could actually bring those barbarians, as Zag actually wanted in the previous video, to introduce some sort of a common enemy that that actually these barbarian people are actually trying to invade and capture more land, as actually barbarian do through the history on Earth. That's how actually I was like thinking about how it goes.
Almost like
at
the
least
hordes
for the
of the
history,
North
and then
coming in.
and excuse me.
What was that?
Go ahead. Like,
It's
No, I
almost
couldn't-
like the hordes of the North coming in and just always harassing the Romans and the civilized peoples of the world. So it would be a third party in the conflict. So you're talking almost
third
like
party
having
in the conflict, but they are actually trying to take over lands. In fact, like they're actually trying to expand their territory, like we can see actually in the history in our actually on Earth. So that's how I was actually kind of thinking about it, and from now we can actually like leave those kind of expansions, for example, like for this mind map, and leave the player to form the history, to see who's going to conquer more, or to see how well there will be a peace. Well, there will be, for example, like certain regions of certain of that barbarian whatever society or civilization are going to be having peace with us, with the Tyrian or with the Ethiopian people. Sorry.
all right.
Elysians people, excuse me. So, I was actually thinking to make it a little bit more real on the ground. For example, like having not always one certain, like one government society or one government civilization. Could be a little bit like split it, like countries or something like that. What do you think about that, Zach?
Oh, I think if I take your idea and distill it down, it's something that that did come up in our previous video, because the basics of it, the meat of it, is to have a third race that is really kind of your greater antagonist that is fighting both sides. That's the simple way to look at it. Now, you defined the visual theme as being very steampunkish, and it just seems like every time I turn around, there's somebody else who wants to find a way to get a crowbar in there and just wedge in something having to do with steampunk. Please, oh God, can we have steampunk in our game? And it's just...
Don't worry. Basically, what he's saying is Lee says that about 15 times a day over here.
Seriously, I can't throw out any idea without Lee going like, oh, well, this should totally be a steampunk thing, and can we have something with gears and knobs and things, which I'm fine with. Honestly, I had figured we would work in some sort of visually steampunk-like element, he said with exasperation. But I was probably going to associate that more with the necromancers on the planet Aletheia. Generally speaking, I'm fine, and I actually like the idea of there being a third element that comes into play to kind of help further the conflict. But I'll be...
In fact, it would be even... Yeah, excuse me, Zach. Actually, in fact, it would be even cooler that even that third society or that third race, it could be even a player chooses it. And even, I mean, it could be even much more fun that the player who chooses that society, he doesn't even know where the planets are. And he just start to find and expand his territory. If he stumbled about the turns, boom, I got it. Like it's like my luck. Here you go, let me invade it. So it was like I was actually love more that the player forms the history of the game more than having like a deep pre-history of the game. How actually I look at it.
Well, that's the only catch, though, is that at some point, all of the players need to be at the same point in history so that they can interact. Remember, one of the funny things about an MMO is that every single person is going to try to have their own unique experience. It's almost like an axiom of the genre where everybody who plays wants to feel like the chosen one. And to me, if you allow too much history definition to take place on an individual player basis, you're basically making a single player game.
Yeah, well, everybody as a whole, from the starting point in time in the MMO going forward, will be establishing new history.
Right.
But to get to where we are, I do agree with, I very much like for the player to learn, of course, all of this lore through gameplay.
Right. Don't tell them, show them, and don't even show them. Let them experience it.
Yeah, you guys are on the development side right now, where we really need this entire thing to be defined, and I want it concrete. But then when we get over into the game side, it's, how do we take this once we have our final story and history all in place and turn it into a believable environment that allows for players to discover this history, to learn this history as they're in the progress of creating a new chapter in these two races or three races or factions history as they move forward.
Yeah, we're making our starting point. And then we need to build and flesh out the universe in which every character will experience the remainder of their lives in the game, so to speak.
I do agree that we need some sort of a common enemy, whether it be a third quote-unquote race or faction or something internal, something that's already here. But I also very strongly believe that antagonistic force does not need to be player character based.
Though I will say that I did like one of Mr. Mohammed's ideas with, if you could play this third, and I know everyone might throw popcorn at me, and that's cool, but I just wanted to let him know that I'm on his side of, what if you were able to play this other race and you didn't know anything about where anyone else was? You've got to just come upon it yourself. What if? Now of course that means they're not tangled into any of our history as far as wars go or anything. But that's not to say that us as the developers are working our way towards a new great war with this third faction, and let that be built from the point where game begins as they begin discovering it.
Well, you borrow almost from Battlestar or Mass Effect in that fact. The barbarian races could be in a flotilla of ships lost in space trying to find their way.
Mm-hmm.
And then eventually through gameplay, they happen to discover the other two races.
That, to me, that's and I know
You're writing a really close
I
fringe
know
in
because
having to discuss gameplay.
I'm about to break my own rule, but hang on, I'm looking for my CEO card. Oh, there it is. I'm just I'm holding this up. Please bear with me. He's got an awesome point. If it's almost like its own game that's going on,
and that's my only beef with it.
I totally understand, because this is out there, but I'm expanding on what he said.
Because what I think you're doing right now is you're breaking off and making a sub MMO that could end up being highly limited.
I'm just tossing ideas on the table to put in the back of your head. That's all I'm doing. No ideas are going to be left out. So it's interesting because it's defining history as we move forward, as the game begins, based off of what happens when and if somebody finds somebody. I know it's you started this flood, so I get to only add to it. What of the person who joins the game a month after they've already discovered people? They don't get to experience that because they've already been discovered. But they have a history that's been defined by the players. Go ahead, Mohammed.
Well, if you look at it from this side, look at the real life. For example, you born, for instance, I don't know when have you been born, actually, which year, but for example, you have been born when electronics already have been around. Radios have been around. You didn't experience the life before radios, so you just got them there.
Yeah, and to further
that's the idea.
And to further that, what happens if you sign up in World of Warcraft Cataclysm now? The Lich King's already dead. Damn it. You didn't get.
But you can still go through it and run that dungeon.
Sure, let's put your ass in a spaceship somewhere and see if you can find. I'm just kidding. I know.
But you can't play the original Barons in all these other locations anymore.
I know, but let me just, like Guild Wars 2, this is the big thing that they're trying to accomplish, which is, and I give the same look that Zach does, but they're touting that they're actually pulling it off. We'll see, but it's.
I think what they're doing is going to have to be something where you have situations that constantly revolve and fade back and forth between one side and another.
I agree. Though I have
based on wars.
Their designers say that when major events take place that define the future in the game will never be experienced again.
Well, but that's also true in World of Warcraft. Look at the Shattering. Look at simpler things like the building of the the silly place up in the north where you do all the jousting and whatnot. You know, that place got built once, and now you never see it again.
Right.
But generally, with all of the smaller things, from what I was reading and watching on the Guild Wars 2 thing, a lot of the conflicts that are going to be big and momentarily, you know, changing, are going to kind of wash back and forth and ebb and flow like the tide. But that's the impression that I got. Now, I haven't played the game, and none of us have, and I'm not exactly, you know, calling up the developers to say, hey, how are you guys doing this? So
Well, the flip side, real quick, I can see Zach's point in the fact that now you're talking about if we did like a flotilla, you do have your mini MMO out in space. That's an experience that we'd have to code, and a limited number of people would experience for a limited amount of time. But what do they do when they're lost in space other than looking for stuff and walking around their spaceships?
Well, okay, but here's a compromise.
Well, why not giving clues, for example? Why not giving clues, for example? I mean, you cannot leave the player like all alone. You could, for example, like leave some tracks on the planet, for example, that lets the guys theorize, that lets guys try to focus, because mostly, like, when you throw them on the first beginning, everybody will be just completely focused, trying to search in the area that they are living in, and they will actually try to forge as much like details and as much how can I say, evidences that they can actually form some sort of a theory that they can right now know where they can speculate where exactly those planets are. I mean, in general, I mean just a global idea, for instance. Like we, for example, on Earth, we just see traces of, I don't know, the pyramids or whatever. People are just speculating, okay, these are the aliens, I don't know, and then people just try to read the hieroglyphics and then figure out the history and everything. Why not as well leaving such tracks that could lead the players as well to come to these middle conflicts, or just to get meeting in with these two races?
Well, here's a compromise that I think could actually make it work, and then really I think we need to move away from contemplating gameplay elements, but I will throw this out there. There's no reason why something very like this couldn't be explored, and I hate to reach over too much into what other MMOs have done, but take a look at the concept of starting zones, where you jump in, you start the game, and then you experience a certain uprun of history, something that literally takes place before the quote-unquote common era of the game. And in that, your character grows, you kind of learn what is going on. But for you, it's like an experience that is branching. If it's the first time you've done it, it's like all of this discovery really does take place. So let's say you have this third race who is in this spacefaring flotilla trying to, and they don't know about anybody. And then as you move forward and you level, you take missions for the first time, you eventually you play a pivotal role in helping to discover these two races. And then once you've completed that quote-unquote starting zone, you're now caught up to the common era, and now you play along with all the other players.
Yeah, I'm just tossing ideas on the table. That's all.
And I don't disagree with anything that has been presented. My major concern is that I think one of the underlying things with an MMO should be to try to bring players together, as opposed to separate them into individual cells that make it hard for people to get together.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. Okay, we're about...
Well,
go ahead, Mohammed.
Well, nothing actually majorly special. Okay, I like actually as well the Zach's idea, although if you look at it from a deeper point of view, and I will not actually argue about that, I know how Zach is kind of beginning to be sensitive about the cages and everything, but I would love to say that if you're going to put the character like this in such a way, you could actually let the character alternate the the timeline, if he does the quest in a different way or whatever. But just, it's, in general, I mean, this is like a kind of, I consider it as a statement, just it could be, if it could have happening, I believe that could be not so helpful as it should be. But anyway, it doesn't matter. What I wanted to say as well, could you, just an idea, I really didn't think through it, to be honest, but have you thought about, for example, mutation? I'm not talking about. I'm talking about the mutation of the Terran and the Lithians people. I mean, for example, the Terran, instead of being injected by nanites or whatever, they in order or injected by whatever medicine in order for them to be magicians or something like that. Have you thought about, for example, what happens if they got married? What happens if they get like some sort of a middle race?
Meaning if we had some
Would that be
crossbreeding.
also
Some
happen?
crossbreeding. I think actually I saw
Yes,
I saw
yes.
George ask that earlier.
Yeah, and that's definitely
Mr. Shivan Angel. He asked,
let's
can they
go
breed?
ahead and let's go ahead and put that up there somewhere because it's definitely worth exploring further.
Now let's see.
This as well could be actually introducing some sort of like, as well, it could as well like contribute to history, that you could, for example, have sort of people that they are in between Terrans and Lithians people.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, well, I wouldn't take much of your time. I believe this is all what I wanted to say. Is, Jason, if somebody has his hand is
Okay.
raised out there, probably can take them instead of me. But before I go, I'm really honored that I was talking to you guys. I'm really happy for all the efforts which you put in through the video.
It's our honor that you're here.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad to see so many of you guys here, and I hope you guys can stick it out with us because this is going to be. It's going to be one hell of an adventure, that's for sure, but it's going to be a painful one because there's so much work involved. But thanks a lot, Mohammed. You take care, okay?
Yeah, no problem.
Bye-bye.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
let's see. We've got Mr. Well, actually, before we
need to pause
yeah,
for a moment.
let's go ahead. No, we're not going to pause. For those of you that can continue hanging out, keep your hands up over in the classroom and keep the questions coming in. I'm going to go ahead and hit stop on the video, get this one saved, and start up another one. So, one second. So for those of you that are watching this video,
please continue on to the next video.
That's right. With the session still going, but it's an hour and 50 minutes at this point, and let me just get this one video saved in case, the house blows up. We don't want to lose this video.